If there's one thing that can be said about American Horror Story, it's that the series isn't afraid to venture into the darkest corners of America's history and mythology. And the sixth season, subtitled Roanoke, is no exception. The creators of the show, Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk, are known for their innovative storytelling and pushing the boundaries of the horror genre on television. And with the Roanoke season, they took a different documentary-style approach, aptly called My Roanoke Nightmare, a departure from the format of the previous seasons. The season initially presents itself as a true crime documentary, with talking head interviews and dramatic reenactments. We follow the couple Shelby and Matt Miller, who recount their horrifying experiences after moving into a haunted farmhouse in North Carolina. This being American Horror Story, things quickly take a twisted turn. Not only do the Millers have to deal with vengeful spirits and eerie occurrences, but they also find themselves caught in a web of horror that connects back to the lost colony of Roanoke, one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. From ghostly apparitions of colonial settlers to menacing figures wearing pig heads, the show draws very heavily from the folklore and speculation surrounding the lost colony, providing the show's signature terror, tension, and tragedy. And while the season did not receive the best reviews, it is widely praised for its unique format and intense performances. Now, let's explore the real history of Roanoke and how it inspired this roller coaster of a season. In 1584, 2 exploratory voyages, commissioned by Sir Walter Raleigh, found a suitable location for England's first colony in the New World. This was Roanoke Island, situated off the coast of present-day North Carolina. The location seemed promising with fertile lands and friendly Native American tribes. The initial settlement, known as the Roanoke Colony, was established in 1585. The colonists, however, were ill-prepared for the challenges they faced. Hostilities with the local tribes, harsh winters, and food shortages led to the colony being abandoned within a year. But the English did not give up on Roanoke. A second expedition led by John White, including men, women, and children, returned to the island in 1587 to establish the city of Raleigh. However, the fledgling colony faced its own set of problems. Due to dwindling supplies, White returned to England later that year, leaving behind about 115 colonists. When he finally returned in 1590, he found the colony deserted with no sign of the settlers, including his own family. The only clue left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a post, and CRO on a nearby tree. Over the years, the disappearance of the Roanoke colony has sparked countless theories. One theory suggests that a rampant disease might have decimated the colony. Smallpox, typhoid, and other diseases brought by Europeans had a devastating impact on Native American populations, and of course that could have affected the colonists as well. But there were no bodies found. At the time, the Americans were not the only colonial power in America. The Spanish, based in Florida, were at odds with the English. And some believe that the Spanish, upon discovering the Roanoke colony, wiped it off the map. We've delved into the deepest mysteries of the Roanoke colony and explored some really popular theories about what happened. But there's a theory that stands out to me personally, not for its dramatic possibilities, but rather its more grounded approach. The perspective comes from the author Scott Dawson. I read his book, The Lost Colony in Hatteras Island. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Dawson proposes that perhaps the tale of Roanoke is not as mysterious or crazy as it seems to be, or has been told to be, made out to be. Words are hard. Through years of archaeological research and with historical records and Native American oral histories, Dawson's theory presents a much more plausible and less sensational theory. Dawson suggests that the colonists, faced with the struggle of establishing a colony in a harsh environment, might have left Roanoke Island to join the Croatoan people on Hatteras Island, a location they had already visited and made connections with. This move wouldn't have been a desperate flight, but a logical choice. After all, the Croatoan had great knowledge of the land, were relatively friendly, and the colonists themselves were far from self-sustaining. Archaeological evidence supports Dawson's theory. Artifacts of European origin dating back to the time of the lost colony have been found on Hatteras Island. These include items like gun flints, pottery fragments, and even a ring that might have belonged to a member of the expedition. Dawson argues that the whole mystery surrounding Roanoke is a creation of historical narratives that favor drama over mundane realities. If the colonists simply joined the Croatoan, as his research suggests, it wouldn't have made as exciting of a story. We probably wouldn't have this season of American Horror Story. Let's circle back to our main focus, American Horror Story Roanoke. You see, it's in its treatment of these historical and speculative elements where American Horror Story truly shines. For instance, the story of the colonists led by the character of Thomasin White, or as she's later known, the Butcher, eerily mirrors the history of the actual Roanoke colonists, their devotion to their colony, the harsh conditions they endure, and their eventual descent into savagery encapsulate the harsh realities of life of the colonial frontier. Simultaneously, the series is unafraid to explore the various theories surrounding Roanoke. The motif of Croatoan is used as an ominous signal throughout the series, lending credence to the theory of a possible native intervention. The colonist spirit's violent nature might even hint toward the darker theory of internal conflict and destruction. The show does take a step beyond the tangible, playing with the supernatural aspect of the Roanoke tale. Ghostly apparitions, ancient curses, and inexplicable phenomena are intertwined with the more grounded elements of history and theory, keeping the viewers perpetually on edge. So in my opinion, the Roanoke season of American Horror Story is not a retelling or an adaptation of theories, but rather an amalgamation of historical facts, speculated fiction, and pure horror that further mystifies the enigma that is Roanoke. But the show's inspirations are not just limited to Roanoke. There are a handful of more inspirations that I picked up on. I'm sure there's more than that. Firstly, the series pays homage to the found footage genre of horror films. This genre, popularized by movies like The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity, typically uses simulated amateur footage to create a sense of realism and immediacy. This style is evident in the My Roanoke Nightmare documentary format used in the season. Also, this season expertly borrows from the tropes of haunted house narratives, a staple of the horror genre. The secluded mansion, the ominous woods, each element contributes to the quintessential haunted house aesthetic, amping up the creepiness factor. One thing I really love about the Roanoke season is the inspiration from folktales. For example, the character that Lady Gaga plays, I'm not even gonna attempt that, I'll just put it right here, is based on a figure from Irish mythology. This added a much deeper mythical layer to the horror, pulling in folklore traditions outside the usual American ghost story sort of vibe. It's also worth noting that American Horror Story is no stranger to being inspired by true crime. For example, Miranda and Bridget Jane, the nurse sisters / lovers, were inspired by real nurses who committed very real crimes. They were also lovers, but not sisters. Gwendolyn Graham and Catherine May Wood were American serial killers convicted for murders committed while they worked together as nurses' aides at the Alpine Manor Nursing Home in Walker, Michigan. Between 1986 and 1987, the pair murdered at least 5 elderly women in their care, reportedly as part of a love pact. Their victims, whose ages ranged from 65 to 97, were reportedly chosen based on their inability to defend themselves or report the abuse due to severe Alzheimer's disease or other debilitating conditions. Their method of murder was typically suffocation, often using a washcloth to avoid leaving any physical signs of foul play. Graham and Wood reportedly turned this into a twisted game, selecting victims whose initials, when combined, would spell murder. Their crimes came to light when Wood confessed to her ex-husband. He initially dismissed the confession as fantasy, but he later went to the police, which led to an investigation. Wood agreed to testify against Graham in exchange for a reduced sentence. In 1989, Graham was convicted on 5 counts of murder and sentenced to 5 life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. Wood was convicted of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit second-degree murder and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. She was granted parole and was released in 2020. While Roanoke's focus is largely historical, the subplot involving the violent Polk family draws on classic horror depictions of deranged, isolated families. And lastly, and personally, one of the most surprising and probably my favorite part of this season was how it weaved in the exploitative nature of reality TV and drew inspiration from that. The show within a show satirizes these programs that manipulate people's feelings and experiences for dramatic effect. It's a subtle critique of our obsession with TV, reality TV, and the voyeuristic pleasure we derive from other people's distress. And let's not forget the cultural and social dynamics. The show does not shy away from addressing issues of racism, cultural erasure, and classism, embedding these discussions within its narrative. This not only adds depth to the characters and their motivations, but also pushes viewers to contemplate these matters. American Horror Story serves as a masterclass in how a TV series can draw upon historical events, societal issues, and popular media to craft a compelling narrative. It's more than just a horror show. It's a historical thriller that has us hooked on its dark exploration of America's past. Through the lens of horror, the creators managed to convey the chilling realities of colonial history in this season. So as you can see, the Roanoke season of American Horror Story is an intricate blend of inspirations that come together to create a narrative that is extremely complex, reflective, and of course, above all, horrifying. Furthermore, Roanoke's experimental storytelling format, paying homage to found footage horror films like The Blair Witch Project, kept audiences on their toes. It serves as an example of how a fresh narrative can breathe new life into a long-running series. So whether we are talking about the real-life mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke or its horror fiction counterpart, one thing is certain: these stories continue to bewitch us, illustrating that sometimes the most frightening tales are the ones we can't wrap up neatly.